Hey there. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Political Deep Dive this evening. Special broadcast. We had some issues on Sunday night, so we wanted to move it and make sure that we had a full broadcast for tonight and hit all our broadcast channels. So thank you for joining us on Tuesday evening. We'll get to our guest here in a moment. I do have a couple of announcements wanted to go through before we got started tonight. So this weekend in Norfolk, Virginia, is the regional affiliate and campaign training for Region 5. There are other regional affiliate trainings that are going on. Actually, let me share the screen for that. All right, so this regional affiliate and campaign training initiative going on in several parts of the country. So we're in Norfolk this weekend. There's going to be a campaign training in New Jersey, in Indianapolis, Iowa, Los Angeles in a couple weeks. We're just outside of Los Angeles, and in Louisiana as well. We just had the training in Salt Lake City. And we've had this training down in Atlanta, and everyone who I have spoken with that have done the training have had nothing but great things to say about the training. So if you're in any of these areas, even if your region that your LP region that you're in has already had their training, check out any of the other trainings and see if they have a space for you to come and do that. It's a great chance to get trained up on things like becoming a campaign treasurer, a regional affiliate treasurer, analytics, using the data from the CRM, running a campaign, being a campaign manager, being a candidate, running an affiliate. So there are lots of things to learn. You become a certified, trained asset for the Libertarian Party, and you'll go back to your states and be a key resource in growing the party. So can't recommend doing that enough. If you're going to Norfolk this weekend, you'll get to see me. I'll be down there as with our regional rep Susan Hogarth. So come by and say hi. I'd love to see you and talk to you. So stop with that. The other thing that we'll talk about is the 50th anniversary that's coming up in August 27th, 28th in Denver, Colorado. Let me share the screen on that one. Yeah, so the 50th anniversary is going to be at the what is it? Because the Lake House at Pelican Bay on the southeast side of Denver, close to like between Aurora and Centennial. So come on down, check that out. We'd love to see you out there. It's a good chance for us to get together and celebrate the 50 years of the Libertarian Party. So if you have any information, or if you need any information, 50.lp.org or lp.org/50. Either one of those addresses will get you to this website. So this evening, I am very excited to talk to Mr. Germinal Van. Let me bring him on here. Germinal, how you doing, sir?
Hi, David. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. I've been wanting to talk about the economy because the economy is becoming a much more bigger issue of late. It's always a big issue. The economy always hits on every aspect of our life, but now it is a very big issue. But before we get too deep into it, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about your background and all that stuff.
I was born and raised in the Republic of Ivory Coast, which is a French-speaking country in West Africa. And I pursued my education there. And I got my high school diploma, and then I came to the United States to pursue my undergraduate studies. And in the US, I majored in political science. I went to the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. So I majored in political science and minored in philosophy. And then I got my master's degree in political management from the George Washington University in 2017. So I got my bachelor's in 2014 and my master's in 2017. I took like a year off in the meantime to work. But Yeah, so so that was pretty much my educational background. And then after that, I tried to go to law school, and it didn't really work out. Took the LSAT 3 times and failed. So I decided to write. And as I started writing, at first my writings were more about political science and legal theory.
Mhm.
And then I started diving into economics when I learned more about libertarianism, because libertarianism is the political philosophy that is very ingrained into economics. When you discuss with any libertarians, they have a pretty good knowledge of the free market of economics. Like you something that Republicans may not know for sure. I mean, they don't have like a deep assessment of economics the way libertarians do. So that's how I got into economics pretty much. And then I started writing more about economics. I started to learn about the Austrian school. Then I started learning about the Chicago school with Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell and George Stigler. And then I just became an economist. I just decided to do pure economics. I even forgot, like I even left the political aspect of things. I say I'm just going to dedicate my work to economics, and that's when I got into econometrics, since it's the subject. It's one of the subjects of the interview today. So I taught myself econometrics last year during the pandemic. So everyone was at home, nothing to do. So I was like, that was the perfect time to start learning new skills. And I always wanted to test my theories. So that's how I trained myself. And I was doing a certificate in mathematical statistics from Duke University.
Okay. So tell me, what is econometrics? I mean, it sounds almost like kind of like what we're doing with sports, with data analytics and that type of stuff, where we're diving deeper into how do the numbers tell you what's going to happen? Is that kind of what econometrics is?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you said it right in layman terms. Yeah,
Okay.
it's basically the application of statistics to economics. So, but the main difference between econometrics and pure statistics is that you work with economic data compared to statistics, where it's pretty much broad. And in statistics, you can also work with experimental data, like the way they do in labs. They experiment between those who have the treatment and the placebo. In pure econometrics, you cannot really do that. You work with historical data. You try to make sense of the data that you have at hand and try to predict or forecast what could happen in the future. But yeah, that's pretty much what econometrics is. It's simply the application of statistical method to economic theory.
Okay. So we'll jump right into the U.S. economy then, and kind of look at it through a lens of econometrics. What is wrong with the U.S. economy?
Well, what is wrong is that we have high inflation going on. On my website, I published one of my articles, which I talk about inflation, and the price of commodities has risen pretty significantly, I'll say. And but income has been either stagnated or decreasing, because people are not working. Most people are not working. So if you're not working, you can't have a high income. And they still giving those stimulus check, but those stimulus check are not improving people's condition in the long term.
No,
And
no. Oh
and
yeah.
and that's what and that's what is going on pretty much. Like, yeah, the price of commodities has just increased, and it's unbearable. And the worst is that inflation continue to increase. I even made a forecasting where I predicted that inflation in September will be by 6%. This is my
Wow.
forecast. I could be wrong, but from my studies, from what I did, it will be around like 6.67%. I
Wow.
hope it decreases, but based on what Jerry Powell said, inflation is going to keep rising until the end of the year. So it might even be more than what my predictions say on inflation. So the U.S. economy is not doing good, and what I'm skeptical about is that they're trying to bring back the mask mandate again, which is not going to improve the condition, because since things start to loosen up, people were thinking of having everyone coming back to work, coming back to the office. And now, like,
Mhm.
I checked the COVID case data yesterday, and things are rising slowly. It looks insignificant, but it's something we should not neglect, because it could rise very fast and it will change everything. Because in Europe already, some countries are going through their third or fourth wave of COVID. Here we don't have an official third wave, but it looks like some states are already experiencing a COVID comeback. So I hope it won't become a national issue again like it was last year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the things that I noticed was that over the last year, we've done $6 trillion worth of stimulus, and then last March we did $4 trillion of market liquidity through the Fed. If we had taken that $10 trillion and divided up, I mean, if you were lucky enough to qualify for it, the most individual would have gotten was 3,200 out of that. If we had divided that up equally amongst every man, woman, and child in the United States, it would have been about $32,000.
Well, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that people, like a family of four, could have gotten through the pandemic with about $130,000, $120,000 worth of money, instead of it going, most of it going to God knows where?
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because this would be a huge plus for them. Like, it would be a game changer. Like, you give that kind of money to a low income family, it would be definitely a game changer. Now, of course, it depends on how everyone behaves when they have
Mhm.
money in their hands too. Financial literacy is very important, and it is a very individualistic thing. If you don't learn how to manage your money, even if they give you $1 million, you're still going to
Yeah,
waste it.
sure. I
So
mean,
it really depends on each family how they manage their money.
but like Milton Friedman would talk about, he advocated for not really uh, that monthly basic income, but he argued for a negative income tax. But he was like, we don't care where they spend the money. They're just going to spend the money and let them spend the money wherever they spend it. But still, yeah, there are plenty of stories throughout history of people winning lotteries and being broke in 5 years. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, uh, so despite all of the wrongness of what's going on in the U.S. economy, what is going right with the U.S. economy right now?
Well, what is going right with the US economy is innovation. The fact that we innovate, we are finding and creating new ways to maintain mankind being productive, to maintain mankind in productivity. Uh, what is going right is that we are transitioning into a digital economy, and this transition has not been completed yet until we adopt the digital currency. Once the United States adopts the digital currency, then it's official. We officially have a digital economy.
Mhm.
But for now, we're not there yet. But it's going there, and more people are creating business too. That's the thing. Like, today you have your laptop and you just sitting on your bed. You start a website and you pay your
Yeah,
LLC. You pay or buy your LLC for $100, and you're a business and you promote it. You don't have to exchange your I won't say your time. You still have to exchange your time, but you don't have to exchange your physical effort to make money, because you're just sitting in your room. And it's also, so the customer too, or the client, has to make an effort to be involved in that. So
Mhm.
So yeah, it's very interesting. So like it's so a lot of people are creating many ways of or streams of passive income, including myself with the books, with YouTube, my Udemy course, the stocks. So and
Yeah.
I'm doing all of that from home. I'm home and doing all of that. So yeah, so that's what is going right with the economy is that many people now have the opportunity to start a business that was much more difficult, let's say 30 years ago, because everything was physical, but now everything is in the computer.
So I mean, it almost seems like we're I almost hate to say democratizing the workspace. Really, I mean, it used to be that you'd have to go find the job. You had to go where the job was.
Yeah.
Now we're getting to the point as we move to a digital economy that you just be there and provide the technology, and then even in some cases, the company provides the technology too.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
you just are there and provide the service that the company needs, and you're you can work whether it's from I'm in Falling Waters, West Virginia, or Topeka, Kansas. It doesn't matter. Just be there, be connected, and you can and work. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that's even what I experienced last year because once COVID hit, I was home like everyone else. So as I said, I started training myself in data analytics and statistics and all of that. And then I started applying for jobs in that field. And I got a job as a data analyst and consultant for a company based in Utah. It's a software company based in Utah doing market research, and I'm working for them from home, and
yeah,
and that's amazing. Like I'm just home. The only trip I take is or make is from the bedroom to the kitchen to make my coffee. And that's then I go back
yeah.
and then I go back to the office and I work until I start at what 8:30 until 5:36 ish, and I'm done.
There
And
you
then I
go.
go for a walk for a little bit, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean that's the amazing thing is up until March of 2020, my workplace was not really keen on it. We had about 50% telework, but that was about as far as they wanted to go with us. And over the last year and a half, we've been far more productive and doing 100% telework. And they're like, yeah, I think we're going to kind of keep with this 100% or not 100% telework, but we'll probably go to the office like once a week. But yeah, it's amazing how this whole thing has changed everyone's
Oh yeah,
perception of
absolutely.
remote work and telework.
I was even checking the data. I don't have the number in my head, but that was like a couple months ago. And it's amazing how you see the rise of remote work.
Hmm.
Like 2015, it was already there, but March 2020 to December, it just peaked. I was
Yeah,
like, wow, it's just amazing, and that's one thing that people want. People don't want to have to relocate all the time. So as more jobs are being created online, that would be a way to relaunch the economy again because people are willing to work, but they just don't want to have to leave the house. I mean, of course, there's some people they would rather do that. They would rather like, get out of the house, go back to the office and stuff like that. This is a debate where people will never agree on it because some would rather stay home like me. Others would rather go in the office. But those new jobs that are being created are giving an opportunity for people, no matter where they are in the United States, to have a job.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think of it like this that it's not a one size fits all anymore. That you don't not everyone should have to go to the office if they they're competent enough to work from home. I think the quality of life for work at home workers is far better than those who have to sit in traffic going into the office every day. But some people do enjoy. So you can't completely get rid of the office type structure. That some people thrive in that. So I think it's going to be more of a pick and choose.
Yeah,
Where are you going to be more successful? Where do you think you're going to be more successful? And I think the same thing with our education system, that you can't just after having a year of students sitting out in remote land where some were doing very well and some were struggling, that you can't either go all remote or all in class, but you're going to have a hybrid of the two, where some teachers are teaching remote learning and some teachers are teaching in class learning. And it's the job is to try and touch as many people as possible by doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we talked about inflation. Is that the most concerning number when it comes to the U.S. economy right now?
I mean, it's the most obvious. It's the most obvious, and it's the numbers that is the most accessible too. When it comes to the money supply, it's not everyone that understands how it works and stuff. But for what I can tell is that for now, the Fed is applying the MMT. They're printing a lot of money, and now we don't know if we should refer to Milton Friedman with his monetarism, saying that printing or increasing the money supply is going to increase inflation. But it looks like, I mean, he found a correlation on his studies, and it looks like there's still that correlation still exists, because the money supply is pretty high and inflation is pretty high, and that's what matters to people, because if inflation is high, prices will keep being high, and if prices are high, well, demand might keep falling, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
But for the economy to keep moving around, supply needs to go along too. And right now we have a negative shock going on. So
yeah, I mean, not only are we seeing prices raise, if you go to the store, you see prices on all of your favorite items are going up, or the companies are reducing the size of the packages to hide that price raise, so they're giving you less for the same amount of money that you were paying beforehand.
All right.
They're trying to hide it as best as possible, because when people see the price of their favorite thing go up, they tend not to buy it as frequently. So it's interesting. We do have a couple comments coming in, so let me this one's a long one. Let's start with the truth. Inflation occurs when the supply of money from the corporations being taxed heavily from the government, and corporations have to increase prices to offset revenue being taxed from the government. Any other thesis is just smokescreen to prevent corporate greed from being deemed as unacceptable. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I guess this is his opinion. I'm not going to dispute everyone's opinions.
Sure.
Economics, at the end of the day, it's a social science. It's not an exact science where there is one method and that's it, and we all have to agree.
Yeah.
So no.
All right. Let's see. I'm going to hear about catalactics. You know anything about that?
Oh, kind of like the Austrian about price. I have to admit that I'm not too big on theory. I'm more of an applied economist. Like, I'm more like testing things. I don't spend that much time on theory.
Sure. All right. So let's talk about one of the big issues right now is labor supply. We're seeing a lot of issues about certain sectors, the U.S. economy, especially the lower end services sectors, not having enough labor to be able to reopen. Some blame the low wages and poor working conditions, and others blame the government handouts and things like that. What do you think is the cause of this?
I think it's pretty much it could be a combination of two, but one necessarily outweighs the other, and it's a government handout, because the government is paying people to stay home. That's the thing. Government is paying people to stay home, so people won't. If someone is getting a paycheck, I don't know, $600-700 every month without having to work for it, he's not gonna see the point of waking up at 5:30 if he has to commute to the city and work until 8 or 9 p.m.
Mhm.
So I think it's more the handout than anything else. Like, the government's paying people to stay, and we have like our fourth stimulus now. It's a matter of time before the government try to do another one, and it's gonna keep going, and they're gonna keep people in that routine, and it's basically subsidizing people to stay home and not working.
So do you think that the government is really priming us to try and get into a universal basic income?
You're saying if they're trying to get us into that?
Get used to the idea of having a
I think
universal.
so, yeah. Because I think so because this topic has been brought up for a very long time, and yeah, they keep doing that as a pilot thing, for people to see how they like it. Because it has been tried in a couple states. I know it has been tried in California too, even at the county level. So it's something that people have been pushing for the universal basic income. But if they try to do the universal basic income, then they have to get rid of the welfare state because you can't have both. It will be way too much. And I would personally prefer a universal basic income over the welfare state because you give people money, but you will force. But since there is no welfare state to rely on, you're gonna have to force people to ration, so they can't just get up and blow money away. So I don't think it's necessarily the best thing on earth, but it's a good alternative to the welfare state, in my opinion.
Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, I know that has been tried. I know that Milton Friedman advocated the negative income tax, which is kind
Yeah,
of the same thing. Um, I'm not sold on it, especially now, since we are, let's say we get rid of welfare tomorrow. We're still $29 trillion in debt.
yeah,
How do we pay for it? I mean, I know that we'll get some cost savings off of the ending of welfare, but I don't know that it would be enough to pay every man, woman, and child in the United States a certain stipend of money.
yeah. I even developed a theory recently on the cost of maintaining the welfare state, and if we got to get rid of it, how we would. And I've been advocating for a decentralized approach. So kind of like the Fabian Society, but for socialism instead of like a brutal revolution. We say no, we're gonna gradually nationalize things. So I have that same approach for the welfare state. We're going to gradually decentralize the system. So instead of having a federal one, we drop everything to the states. And now the states will actually bear the burden. They will feel the burden of having a welfare state. The state like New York and California can handle it for a while, but a state like Mississippi, I'm not sure. So each state now will have at least the power to decide if they want to maintain a welfare state or not. And at least here we're still respecting and upholding the sovereignty of the states. Like they get to decide, and then whatever, and then for the states that decide to have a a welfare state. In my theory, I say that okay, the government will hand them some money at first for the transition cost. So we'll give you guys that money to start off, but after that, you're on your own. So the state that accept to have a welfare state will start with that money. So they will increase government spending. So they have to reduce taxes for there because everything is fine. But then once they're done spending that transition cost money that the government gave them, now they're going to implement a progressive income tax in order to have revenues to maintain those social welfare programs. And of course, what is going to happen, as we all know, the rich are going to bounce by. I mean, they're going to bounce away. They're going to either leave the state or keep the money in a place where it can be taxed. And then the tax burden is going to fall on the middle class, and we know the rest. And the middle class will not be able to bear the cost too, and then things will have to wither away, as we say. So that's how I theorize about decentralizing and eventually dismantling the welfare state in the United States if it ever has to happen someday.
Yeah, I mean that kind of almost sounds. There are some distinct differences, but it almost sounds like what they're doing in Sweden, which is instead of it being a federal program, that it's block granted out to the counties, which are the states in Sweden, um, and they provide the services, and a lot of time those services are privatized themselves. Whether it's their medical insurance or their education, all that stuff is provided uh, through private organizations.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean that's interesting thought. Um, So President Trump made a major campaign issue out of trade deficits. Um, in fact, he used them to justify tariffs and other barriers against China and other countries. Should we be concerned about trade deficits?
Uh, Trade deficit has never been a big issue, but it's something that we should still have an eye on, because if we neglect it, it could come back to us. So I've always been a big advocate of free trade. I don't believe in protectionism. I understand why some countries do it. Of course, like in when it comes to the economy, since it's a cycle, you can have one set of policy all the time. So there are times where protectionism may work, but any type of policy that enhance more government control are usually type of policy for short-term purposes. But the issue is that they use those short-term purposes on the long term, and that's why it becomes inefficient. And it's the same paradigm with Keynesian economics. When it was developed at first, it was developed for short-term purposes. It's like you come, you get the economy out of this, and that's it. But of course, that was a political expediency for the state to, like, okay, we see that we have full control of what's going on here. We can't leave. And then the government becomes a competitor of against the private sector too.
Yeah.
And that's why Keynesian economics, as it goes, is simply inefficient, because they get into something that was designed for short-term purposes. They use that for long-term stuff, and it has secondary effects. So when it comes to the trade deficit, is the trade deficit people should worry about to some extent, because it's going to come back to us one way or another, and we have to pay for it. So what we have to try to do is to minimize it as much as we can, because it's not because it doesn't have any effect now that it won't have later. So it's something that should be taken care of by the government.
Sure. It almost reminds me of import substitution industrialization, where countries like Japan, South Korea really grew because they were protectionist in the short term. The problem is they stagnated because the industries that were protected then became politically powerful.
Yeah,
Would lobby to keep the protections so that they wouldn't have to face the open competition, and it just like you say, it doesn't work long term, and
it does. Yeah, it does.
so,
And it's the you see, it's funny because it's the same recipe for socialism. And when people ask me about socialism, I always say consider socialism as a Chinese product. You should, because the Chinese product, most Chinese product are what they're counterfeit. Like they work for a couple months and then we know how it ends up. The same for socialism, but at a macro scale. So for a couple years, it works fine. Then eventually, all the inefficiencies will catch back on them. It will come back on them, and they won't be able to perform. That's exactly what happened with the Soviet Union, with Cuba, with Venezuela. All of them is the same pattern. Most African countries that adopt socialism, at first it works always fine, but they don't think about the long term. They focus on the short term. And it's funny because we can never see a political leader who will actually come and do short term things, and that's it. They do the short term, they see it works, and they want to keep doing it. And it gets into the phase of the long term, and that's when things stop working.
yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of your books, I mean, you really took this whole pandemic and became quite a prolific writer. You've got quite a number of books on your website. Got quite a number of papers that you put out over the few months or the year and a half of the pandemic. But you did one book called "Democratic Socialism on Trial: Why It Won't Work in the United States." So would that be your premise of why it won't work in the United States?
So first I wrote that book like in 2019. That was a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
2019, 2020. But the reason why I believe that it won't work in the United States is because people may claim they want socialism, But the American culture is not a socialistic culture. And no matter how much they claim they want socialism, once they experience it, they will get rid of it ASAP. They'll be like, nah, because they're just claiming something they haven't experienced it yet. So that's why they don't understand. And you will see that most socialists never live in the low income neighborhoods. They don't. They never go there, but they're the one who always know what is best for them. Democratic socialism won't work in the United States because the political system is not designed for it. We have a system that has been set into place to promote individual liberty, and socialism is the complete antithesis of individual liberty. For individual liberty to flourish or to prosper, the the power of the government has to be limited. You cannot have a society where the power of the government is significant in terms of what they decide and what to implement. And you have people living freely and everyone is happy. And you see that today with France. French people, they're tired because Macron is abusing the power of the state to maintain the lockdown on them. But it's their fault. I mean, I don't feel bad for them. It's their fault because they designed that. French people always wanted to have a strong state. I don't know if you realize that, but the French president, on theoretical basis, is the most powerful president in the world, at least in the Western world.
Wow.
Oh yeah, the French president has a ton of power. The French president, for instance, has the power to dissolve the parliament. In the United States, no way. Imagine Biden doing that. The entire country would be out. They're like, no, get out of here, man. But in France, like the French president has the power to dissolve the parliament,
Wow.
to
That's
start a new
crazy.
one. Oh yeah. This the most of the laws are by decrees. Oh yeah, it's the French system is a very as libertarians and Rothbardian would say is a very statist. It's
Yeah.
a very statist.
Very famous.
Yeah, it's a very
Yeah,
statist
that's for
environment.
Basquiat.
Yes,
Basquiat came from
right.
that. And, yeah.
So in a place like France, democratic socialism could work in the sense that it could be implemented and it could last for a little bit. But in the US, no. The US was the design is completely opposite to all forms of government expansion. Yes, the government has expanded. It has gone beyond its constitutional scope, but not to the point of enslaving the individual. At the end of the day, yes, government is has expanded, but at the end of the day, this country is a country where you have the freedom to improve your life for the better. You want like the opportunities that people have in the US, you don't find that uh, in other countries. It's not as extended or extensive as it is in the US. That's what I'm trying to say.
So I would almost say that you can also look at it from a purely political standpoint. When you look at countries that have socialism, that well, I'm going to make a differentiation. Like the Scandinavians have welfare state capitalism. Uh, Venezuela, Cuba, they have socialism. Um, but the difference between the two countries or the two sets of countries is the Scandinavian countries have vibrant multi-party democracies where the power is not concentrated really in one political group. It's got to be done by coalition. It's got to be done by if a party decides to go way left field or way right field, there's that moderating influence of the other parties. In Cuba and Venezuela, you only have like one or two parties, just like the United States, that either you're with that program or you're against that program. And if you're against that program, you're an enemy. And if you're an enemy, you can get put into prison and you can be marginalized.
Exactly.
So I think that from a pure political standpoint, the idea that because even though we're fighting to make it a multi-party democracy, we're just not there yet. And if you try and institute something along those lines of socialism, you're going to see something like that happen, where it's going to be, you're not with us, you're an enemy of the state, and in the jail you go.
And I like to add something about what you said on the Scandinavian countries. Is that people claim that Scandinavia is socialist, and it's not, because first of all, there's private property there.
Mm-hmm.
For socialism to occur, you have to abolish private property. That's one of the first assumption or the first rules of to have a socialist state.
Yep.
The Scandinavian countries produce billionaires. I don't think you can produce billionaires in a country that has socialism unless the billionaires are the members of the state. Those billionaires are private people, they're individuals. So yes, like Scandinavian countries are just a big welfare state. Now, when people say they want why we shouldn't copy their system, but people need to understand that Scandinavian culture is a homogeneous culture. Europeans are homogeneous, they're inherently homogeneous. Europe is one of the oldest continent, if not the oldest continent, when it comes to civilization. I mean, there's Africa too, but is one of the oldest. Europe has been at war for a very long time. And when you look at the Scandinavian countries, they're all Vikings. In the US, when the US was created, you already have three races living with each other. You have whites, you have blacks, and you have Native Americans. In Sweden or Finland or Norway or Denmark, they're all Vikings, they're all white, they're all there. So they have a system that enables them to tackle their cultural and social issues. Here you have three different races at the very beginning. And then you have the Mexican American War that happened. So Texas came into the Union. And then now you have Mexican American coming and making the first settlement in the United States. And then you have California being divided between actual California and Baja California in Mexico. So you have like people mingling.
Yeah.
So when you have all these races or all these ethnic groups living together, they have to coexist. You can't apply the solutions adapted to a homogeneous culture into an heterogeneous culture. It's not possible. So we have to be realistic and find, I won't say solutions because there's no solution, but as Thomas Sowell said, we have trade-offs. So we have to try to find trade-offs where every, or should I say the major ethnic groups will benefit to some extent. They can't all benefit to the same degree, but they can all benefit to some extent according to their needs and the realities they're going through.
Excellent. All right, so let us talk about your website. Let me bring that up here. People want to find out more information about you.
I put some quite controversial articles on my website. For instance, there is one article that I post where I talk about the limits and problems with praxeology. I know many libertarians are Austrians and they're strong supporter of Mises and Rothbard, and I criticize their method. Many people were not happy about it, but I post that article there so people can read it and they can write the criticism. That's fine. That's what being a scholar is. Yeah, so these are like my working papers. If you go into more and then you go into my economic thoughts, that's when I write like some of my posts. Yes, talk about the Pigovian theory of market failure, the scientific method. I've been having debates with people about like what is the correct method to use in economics. Pro praxeology, as you could see, has the most views, almost 200 views on it. So yeah, I mean, like my website is I create so people can read my work directly. It's like they have access to it. It's free. Like anyone who's interested in learning about economics, econometrics, and reading like basic economic stuff can always come to my website. And they should
Yeah.
they should definitely subscribe if they want to see more controversial articles.
Um, so, like I said, you've been a very prolific author during your time in the pandemic and even before. But all these books that kind of flying by, starting July 10th of 2019, what do you got? One, two, three, four,
Yeah, this is
five,
even my
six,
fifth book. I didn't even
seven,
put
eight.
like all of it because it's just too much. But
So you got 12 books going on.
I officially started in on April 18th, 2018. That
Okay.
was I wrote a book called American Political Culture and Observation from the Outside. So that book was basically me as a foreigner explaining what it's like to live in a country like the United States. But it's not like an autobiography or anything. It's a pure political science book, like from a political perspective, what it means to live in a country like the US where they have the separation of powers, the rule of law, and they have a federal government. The government can do this and that, and what do people can do. So I try to explain to people that in order to understand the political culture of the country you live in, you need to understand the constitution because people have their personal, they have the character, they have the behavior, but they have a collective behavior too. And the US has a constitutional personality.
Yeah.
That's the United States. That's why the Constitution of the US is the most precious piece of paper on earth. And the reason why is because the US is not a nation. It's not a nation as it may shock people. What binds people together in this country is the Constitution. When you have three, four, five, six ethnic groups living with each other with different cultures, the only way for them to live peacefully, to coexist, is to obey this document. They don't have that problem in Europe. That's why in Europe, when you talk about the constitution, they don't care,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So yeah,
So
that was my first book, and then after that, it just I just kept writing and writing and writing.
one of the books that caught my eye when I was looking at this was the African Nobel Prize. Now, Africa has, had issues sloughing off the colonial yoke. The things that have knocked on since they've become independent countries. Um, you know, whether it was that they were forced to integrate with other groups that they've never really integrated well with before. The Brits like to do the divide and conquer thing, so kept everyone at each other's throats and then just left when they were done. Um, what do you think a Nobel Prize for the African continent would do?
Well, I mean, I explained in the book that it will be a driver for social development because look at the Nobel Prize in general, just the classic Nobel Prize. Look how the Nobel Prize has helped European and American society moving forward in terms of intellectual research. Those people who win the Nobel Prize, their research are funded and they cost a lot of money. You have geniuses in Africa that no one knows. But because the research is not supported by either the government or by private means, so they're just there. So you see a lot of Africans resorting to entertainment as a way to make the continent moving forward. But unfortunately, entertainment doesn't develop a country.
Mhm.
From what I know, I've never seen a country being developed just through entertainment. If that was the case, a country like Brazil would be developed just from playing soccer, but they don't. What develops a country is the scientific method. Great Britain became the most powerful nation on earth because of the Industrial Revolution. And the Industrial Revolution was based on the scientific method. People experiment things and they saw what worked and what didn't. And they transplant that into the US, and the US even quadrupled what the Industrial Revolution. But it's the scientific method that helps society moving forward. And the Nobel Prize has helped Europe develop to a significant extent. When you look at all these discoveries that they've made, it has helped Europeans improving, for instance, like the first Nobel Prize winner, his name is William Röntgen. He's the one who discovered the X-ray. He discovered the X-ray, but today you can go to a doctor if you broke, I don't know, your bone or something like that. They can do an X-ray and see what's going on. Before him, people used to die early. That's why life expectancy was short. But since the Nobel Prize was created, life expectancy increased over time. Specifically, like the Nobel Prize for medicine, all these medical discoveries that have been made have significantly improved society. So that's why my friend and I, we're trying to do in this book is to convince Africans to give the incentive to the intellectual Africans to pursue the research that could help the continent moving forward too. Because we have geniuses, we have talented people there. We felt that if we create a prize like this, it will incentivize professors, independent researchers to get into academic work to promote growth. Because we think that this is a way for Africans to they need incentive. It's a way for them to get into academia and to promote economic development in the continent. That's why we wrote this book.
So on the continent, I mean, there have been scores of socialist countries that have come and gone over the years.
Yeah.
What is the state of kind of that people in Africa who believe in free markets? Is there a growing movement within the continent?
Well, I wanted to say it's 50-50, but ideas of the free market are still not well received. People still believe in socialism because they're like, oh, African culture is a collectivist culture. Here with the culture where you have something, you share things. So they believe that socialism is more appropriate for them, but it's not true, and there are empirical evidence. But that's why ideology is a bad thing, because ideology make you stupid in the sense that we present you the evidence, but when the evidence contradict uh, your beliefs, you reject it.
Mm-hmm.
Or these are the evidence, and ideology has divided more than it has united. That's what has happened, and people back home, when you explain to them, not just explain the benefit of a free market, all the principle of free market, but you show them the evidence that look, the countries who liberalize the market, their economy prosper. Here it is. They still say, "I don't believe you."
Well, we get that here. I mean,
Yeah.
we do that here. We say, hey, we'll do a lot better if we're free market. I'm reading a book by Johann Norberg about how free markets the free markets are great in that they've expanded our economy, but they also do so sow the seeds of dissent because people see their jobs go overseas, or
Yeah.
or they see the others, and they're like, we need to be protected. But really, to continue the advancement of our economy and advancement of a free people, we need to have open market economies, and that it's really interesting to try. You have all this data of, when we have a freer economy, when we open up our economy, we do a lot better. We make things happen and advance so much faster. And then when we close them off, that's when you have things like war and famine and
Exactly.
all that stuff happen. That's what we're seeing. So you've got a class on Udemy for one of them is basic and advanced methods, econometrics. Tell people about that class.
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. So for anyone who wants to take that class, he or she needs to have some basic knowledge of statistics. So basic knowledge, I mean, like knowing how to calculate the standard deviation, the p-value, the chi-square. So all these basic statistical methods, because in econometrics they don't really teach you that. In econometrics, they assume that you know this and they focus on the regression part compared, and that's even one of the difference with pure statistics that I forgot to mention at first when we started the interview. Is that, yeah, in statistics they teach you all of that, the p-value and you know, but in econometrics they assume that you know this. So in this course, basically I'm teaching like the basic methods such as, you know, the simple linear regression, the multiple linear regression, the Darwin-Watson test statistic to check for autocorrelation, teaching also about the outliers, and then the most advanced, talking about the multivariate analysis, the autoregressive, the vector autoregressive, the polynomial. These are more complicated methods. And
Yeah.
I do them, I use like a board where I explain by hand so that people understand. Because one thing that a lot of people find difficult about econometrics is that they learn the thing with the software, which is fine, but they don't really know what they're doing. They don't really know what they're doing. It's important to understand the theory behind it. I know I'm not like a very theoretical guy myself, I admit, but when it comes to this, it's important. Like the way I learned econometrics was that I remember I ran my first regression by hand. I collected the data. I did everything by hand, like as if I was in the 19th century, you know, no typewriter, nothing, everything by hand. But the reason why I did that was to understand the process behind it, because with the software it does all the calculation for you and you don't really understand how we move from point A to get to that result.
And
So
if you have a problem with the data, then you may not be able to identify it if you don't know how to do it.
exactly, so in this course basically I'm going through that, so I'm showing people how the process works.
Yeah, excellent. Let's see. A comment, Meyer Rothbard, modern economics is a set of formulas and equations purporting to fully determine human behavior, at least in the economic realm, and in no way that certain can be compressed into determinate mathematical models.
Another Austrian. Another.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the Austrians and their Rothbards. Oh my God, it's like a cult there. Anyways, the thing, like what Rothbard said is not entirely wrong. Of course, mathematics cannot uh, take every single thing into account, but
Yeah.
the reason why we're still using it is because when it comes to economics, economics at the end of the day is the closest science to the hard science, because the economic indicators are quantitative in nature. When you talk about price, you talk
Mhm.
about quantity, you talk about inflation, you talk about income, you talk about the GDP, the GNP, and all of that. All of that are quantitative. So when you try to determine the output of what needs to be done, you definitely use quantitative method. You can't use logic alone. Logic alone will only help you understand the basis, but it won't give you the result that you need, because at the end of the day, economics remains, at least to me, and that's where I have some issues with the Austrian, is that I see economics as a predictive science. As a predictive science, while like Austrians say that, you know, you cannot really predict. Uh, the economist is not like a social engineer. I have a very engineering approach to economics, but this is my approach. That's why, and as I said, economics is not a hard science. It is not a physics. It's not physics. So we cannot have a unanimous agreement on on our views on economics. That's why
Yeah.
we have school of thoughts in economics, something that you don't see in physics. So yeah, to me, economics is close to a hard science, but I never excluded the human behavior factor. That's why it is a social science at the end of the day, because we analyze human behavior. But quantitative methods can work on human behavior because human behavior, or should I say, human beings repeat actions that benefit them. And when a human repeats action that benefits him or her, you can start quantifying, because you know that, okay, so long as that strategy works, he's going to keep using it. until it no longer works. And that's when it changed.
Well, that's why it explains why politicians continue to use Keynesian economics. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
so,
You know, it's true. Like, if you notice, like, that's how humans are. Like, you're not
yeah,
going to change your habits until,
you're told not to.
yeah,
Your hand gets burnt. Yeah. Germinal, thank you so much for joining us
until
tonight.
it no
We're
longer
out of
works.
time. Yeah, we're out of time this evening, but thank you so much for joining us. If you get a chance, go to the Udemy site, plug in Germinal G Van. You'll be able to get there are 2 courses that I see there. Are there any more?
Yeah. Just 2 courses. So the one on econometrics and the one on differential equations. Differential equations is a little tough, so I don't have many people there yet. But everyone goes to econometrics. Yeah, differential equations is another ball game.
But if you want to read great stuff about economy and politics and how they intertwine, go to his website, germinalgvan.com, and check out the books and check out the articles and the his economic thought. And again, I really appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for joining us on the Political Deep Dive. We'll talk to everyone in 2 weeks. We're not going to have a show on Sunday because I'm going to be down at the training and not back yet. But in 2 weeks, we'll have another show of the Political Deep Dive. And I look forward to seeing you then. Come join us on the Political Deep Dive After Dark after show at 9:30. And anyway, thank you everyone for joining us and have a great night.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on the Political Deep Dive. We air every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can get regular updates on our show and our guests by following us on social media on facebook.com/thepoliticaldeepdive, all one word, on twitter.com/politicaldeep, all one word, on youtube.com/papaduke, PAPADUKE, on twitch.tv, The Political Deep Dive, all one word. And on Mondays, the audio of this episode is uploaded to soundcloud.com/The Political Deep Dive, all one word. And you can join in on the fun on Instagram.com/The Political Deep Dive, all one word. The best way to support the Liberty Movement is to join the Libertarian Party at lp.org. Give us a like, a share, and a subscribe on whatever platform you're watching from. It helps extend our reach, and we greatly appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you next Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern.